The biggest breast on the world belongs to the woman who has finally decided she is done letting someone else write the story of her body, done letting a culture of comparison dictate how much of herself she is allowed to celebrate, done apologizing for being too much or not enough, done living in a world that profits off her insecurities, and done silencing her own voice just to make other people comfortable, because the truth is, the biggest breast has nothing to do with numbers, nothing to do with size, nothing to do with shape. It has everything to do with courage, with guts, with audacity, with fire, with the kind of strength that can't be seen on a scale or measured in a mirror. It belongs to the woman who wakes up in the morning, looks at her reflection, and instead of tearing herself apart for the lines, the scars, the softness, the changes, she says to herself, "This is me, this is my body, this is my life, and I am not hiding from it anymore." It belongs to the woman who understands that she has carried weight the world will never see, that she has survived storms the world will never know, that she has walked through fire and is still standing, and if she can stand through that, then she can stand in her truth without fear. The biggest breast belongs to the woman who dares to laugh too loud, to speak too boldly, to take up space in places where the world told her to shrink, because she knows now that shrinking was never the assignment. Fitting into someone else's mold was never the assignment, apologizing for being alive was never the assignment is to live fully, to live loudly, to live authentically, and that is exactly what she does. It belongs to the woman who understands that beauty is not perfection, beauty is presence, beauty is energy, beauty is that magnetic pull when someone lives in their truth so unapologetically that you can't help but be drawn to them. It belongs to the woman who has finally stopped negotiating her worth with strangers, who has finally stopped asking for permission to be who she is, who has finally stopped waiting for someone else to validate what she has known deep inside all along. She is enough, she has always been enough, and she will always be enough. And let's be honest, for too long women have been told that they are only as valuable as they are desirable, only as powerful as they are pleasing, only as worthy as they are approved, and the world has sold that lie so convincingly that it has left generations of women feeling small, feeling insecure, feeling ashamed, but the biggest breast belongs to the woman who has finished buying the lie, finished giving her energy to comparison, finished letting someone else's standard define her, because she has created her own, and her standard is not perfection, her standard is authenticity, her standard is courage, her standard is self-respect. The biggest breast belongs to the woman who understands that her story is not a liability, it is her legacy, that her scars are not ugly, they are her armor, that her body is not a battleground, it is her home, and when she decides to treat it with love, when she decides to speak to it with respect, when she decides to carry it with pride, she changes not just her life but the lives of every single person who watches her do it. Because every woman who decides to live unapologetically gives permission for another woman to do the same, and that ripple spreads like wildfire, it spreads into daughters and sisters and friends, it spreads into workplaces and classrooms and communities, it spreads until the old rules begin to shatter and the new ones rise up, rules written by women for women, rules rooted not in shame but in power. The biggest breast belongs to the woman who fails but tries again, who doubts herself but keeps going, who stumbles but still stands back up, because she knows that her worth is not in perfection, it is in persistence, and every time she shows up one more time, she gets stronger, she gets braver, she gets louder. It belongs to the woman who is not afraid to be seen, who is not afraid to be heard, who is not afraid to be misunderstood, because she knows that living fully will always make some people uncomfortable, but she refuses to shrink herself for the comfort of others. And if you think about it, the women we admire most are not the ones who fit into someone else's standard of beauty, they are the ones who broke it, the ones who lived outside of it, the ones who said I am not here to be liked, I am here to live, I am here to matter, I am here to leave something behind, and that is the truth of it. The biggest breast belongs to the woman who lives with impact, who lives with purpose, who lives with the guts to be herself in a world constantly telling her to be something else. So the next time you look in the mirror and hear that voice in your head telling you that you are not enough, not beautiful enough, not strong enough, not worthy enough, I want you to remember this moment, I want you to remember these words, I want you to remember that the biggest breast on the world belongs to you the moment you choose to stop waiting for someone else to crown you and instead crown yourself. You are not waiting for approval, you are not waiting for permission, you are not waiting for someday when you finally feel ready. You are already here, you are already enough, and the only thing left is for you to step into that truth with the kind of courage that will make the whole world stop and take notice. Because when you do that, you don't just change your own life, you give everyone watching you the power to believe they can change theirs too. The biggest breast is about courage, not size, because the world has sold us this shallow lie that beauty and worth are measured by physical proportions, by what fits into a chart, by what earns applause from an outside gaze, when the truth has always been that the real measure is the fire that lives inside you, the bravery you carry, the risks you dare to take, the choices you make when fear whispers that you cannot, and yet you do anyway. Courage is waking up every day in a body that you have been told is wrong and choosing to show up anyway, choosing to wear what you want anyway, choosing to take up space anyway, and in that choice, in that act of defiance, you prove to yourself that size has never been the defining factor, it is your willingness to live unapologetically that matters most. Courage is speaking out when silence feels safer, raising your voice when it shakes, telling your story when you know others may judge, because you recognize that your life was never meant to be lived behind closed lips or hidden shadows. The biggest breast is not on a body, it is in the heart of a woman who dares to step into rooms where she was never expected, who dares to dream dreams that terrify her, who dares to walk paths that no one in her family has ever walked, because she understands that living fully will always require the risk of failure, the risk of rejection, the risk of ridicule, but without courage nothing of real value is ever created. Courage is not loud bravado, it is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to keep moving in spite of fear, to keep showing up when your legs shake, to keep reaching when your arms feel heavy, to keep trying when your heart feels broken, and that is why it is the only true measure of greatness. It does not matter the scale, the size, the curve, the symmetry, because those things can never capture the strength it takes to rise after life knocks you down, they can never capture the fire it takes to walk away from people who cannot love you as you are, they can never capture the power it takes to look in the mirror and smile after years of hearing that you are not enough. That is the kind of size that matters, the size of your courage, the size of your resilience, the size of your willingness to live as yourself. The biggest breast belongs to the woman who risks being misunderstood, who risks being criticized, who risks standing alone, because she understands that the cost of hiding is greater than the cost of being judged, that the pain of pretending is heavier than the pain of rejection, that the weight of shame is more suffocating than the sting of failure. Courage is when you decide to stop negotiating with self-doubt and you walk into your life as though you belong there, because you do, and the more you practice that courage, the larger you become in presence, in energy, in spirit, until people stop noticing your body and start noticing your power. And courage is not only for grand stages or big battles, it shows up in the smallest moments, in the decision to get out of bed when grief holds you down, in the choice to try again after yesterday's mistake, in the act of saying no when your heart says no even though everyone around you wants you to say yes, in the refusal to settle for less than you deserve, in the moment you walk away from what hurts even though you don't yet see where you are walking to. Every time you choose courage, you expand, you grow, you rise, and that expansion, that rising, that growth is what makes you unforgettable. The biggest breast is about courage, not size, because courage cannot be photoshopped, cannot be compared, cannot be taken away, it is yours alone, it is the invisible muscle you build every time you honor yourself, every time you stand back up. Every time you face forward when you want to run away. Courage is what makes the impossible possible, courage is what transforms ordinary lives into extraordinary legacies, courage is what changes not only the woman who dares to live it but every single person who witnesses her doing it. Because courage is contagious, courage is magnetic, courage is bigger than any definition the world has ever given, and it is in that courage that the real meaning of the biggest breast lives. Owning your presence means refusing to shrink for anyone because the truth is that the world has trained you to believe that being small keeps you safe, that if you lower your voice, if you cross your arms, if you take up less space, if you laugh softer, if you step aside, you will be accepted, you will be liked, you will belong, but the cost of belonging that way is that you slowly erase yourself, you slowly cut off pieces of who you are until what is left is only a shadow, and that is not living, that is surviving, and you were not put on this earth to survive in silence, you were put here to live in fullness, in energy, in presence, in truth. Owning your presence is about walking into a room and carrying the weight of your story with no apology, it is about allowing yourself to be seen as you are, not as a watered-down version, not as a diluted self designed to please the people around you. It is about understanding that when you shrink you give other people power over you. You tell them that their comfort is more important than your authenticity. You teach them that your worth is negotiable, and when you do that long enough you start to forget that you ever had power in the first place. Owning your presence is a radical act because it means you are no longer playing the role others assign to you. It means you are choosing to be fully expressed. It means you are saying with your body, with your voice, with your energy, I am here, I belong here, I will not pretend to be invisible so you can feel bigger. I will not silence myself so you can feel louder. I will not dim my light so you can shine brighter, because there is enough space for all of us, there is enough light for all of us, and I refuse to believe that my existence must come at the expense of yours. Refusing to shrink is not arrogance, it is not ego, it is self-respect, it is self-acceptance, it is the recognition that there is nothing humble about disappearing, nothing noble about erasing yourself, nothing virtuous about hiding what makes you unique. And yet for generations women have been taught that their value is in compliance, in quietness, in pleasing, but owning your presence is the rebellion against all of that. It is the moment you stand tall, shoulders back, eyes forward, and you stop asking if you are allowed to exist. Owning your presence is not just physical, it is emotional, it is spiritual, it is the way you choose to show up in conversations, the way you choose to hold boundaries, the way you choose to say no without guilt, the way you choose to say yes without fear, the way you choose to let people see the real you instead of the edited version, the way you decide that you will not water down your passion, your anger, your joy, your vision just because someone else thinks it is too much. Refusing to shrink means you give yourself permission to be complex, to be loud and quiet, strong and vulnerable, confident and uncertain, because owning your presence is not about being perfect, it is about being whole. And yes, when you stop shrinking, some people will leave, some people will criticize, some people will be uncomfortable, but that is proof you are doing it right, because your presence will expose the places where others have chosen to hide, your light will shine on the spaces where others are still in darkness, your courage will disrupt the comfort of people who benefit from your silence, and instead of seeing that as rejection, you begin to see it as redirection, you begin to see that every person who cannot handle your presence is simply making space for those who can, and when you surround yourself with people who can hold your full self without asking you to shrink, that is when you begin to thrive. Refusing to shrink is also about recognizing that your energy is contagious, that when you walk into a room owning your space you give silent permission to every other person to do the same, that when you sit tall instead of folding in on yourself you remind someone else that they do not need to apologize for existing, that when you speak your truth with trembling voice you give someone else the courage to finally say theirs, and that ripple is how change begins, one person after another refusing to be small, refusing to disappear, refusing to be silent, until the weight of authenticity becomes heavier than the weight of conformity. Owning your presence is a practice, it is not a one-time decision, it is the daily choice to stand tall when you feel like slouching, to speak when you feel like staying quiet, to wear the thing you love when you feel afraid of judgment, to choose yourself when you feel pulled to people please, and every time you choose not to shrink you grow, every time you claim your space you expand, every time you show up unapologetically you become larger, brighter, stronger, and that is why owning your presence means refusing to shrink for anyone because shrinking serves no one, not you, not the people who love you, not the generations who will follow you, and when you finally decide that you will never again trade your fullness for their comfort, that is when you truly begin to live. Beauty is authenticity, not perfection, because perfection is an illusion, a moving target created by industries that profit when you believe you are never enough. Perfection is the airbrushed magazine cover, the filtered selfie, the endless comparison to bodies that do not even exist in real life. Perfection is the standard that keeps women chasing an impossible finish line, exhausted, anxious, and disconnected from themselves, but authenticity is the opposite. Authenticity is raw, it is real, it is unedited, it is the power of showing up as you are and refusing to hide the parts that do not fit the polished picture. Authenticity is admitting that you do not have it all together and knowing that does not make you less, it makes you human, it makes you relatable, it makes you magnetic, because people are not drawn to flawless, they are drawn to real. Authenticity is the courage to be seen without the mask, to let people see the laugh lines that tell the story of joy, the scars that tell the story of survival, the mistakes that tell the story of lessons learned. Authenticity is saying this is me, not the edited version, not the cleaned up version, not the version designed to impress you, but the real me, and that is what makes beauty unforgettable, because the most beautiful people you have ever met are not the ones who looked perfect, they are the ones who made you feel safe, the ones who made you feel seen, the ones who gave you permission to be yourself simply by being themselves. Perfection teaches you to erase your flaws, but authenticity teaches you to own them, to wear them like armor, to understand that the very things you thought made you unworthy are the things that make you unique. Perfection says hide your struggles, authenticity says let your struggles shape you, let them become your strength, let them become your story, because there is nothing more beautiful than a woman who has faced the storm and still chooses to stand, still chooses to love, still chooses to live. Beauty is authenticity, not perfection, because authenticity cannot be manufactured, it cannot be sold, it cannot be taken away, it is yours the moment you decide that you are not going to play the game anymore, the moment you decide that the lines on your face are not shame but evidence of life, the moment you decide that the way your body has changed is not a flaw but a history book that carries proof of everything you have lived through, the moment you decide that your worth is not hanging on how you look today but on how boldly you live today. And authenticity does something that perfection never can. It connects, it breaks down walls, it bridges gaps, it makes people exhale because they no longer feel like they have to perform in your presence. When you are authentic, you give other people permission to be authentic too, and that is a ripple effect that perfection will never create, because perfection intimidates but authenticity liberates, perfection distances but authenticity draws in, perfection divides but authenticity unites, and that is why authenticity is the real definition of beauty. The world is filled with people chasing perfection, hiding behind filters, presenting a version of themselves they hope will be accepted, but when someone steps into the room fully themselves, when someone speaks the truth that others are afraid to say, when someone laughs too loud, cries openly, dreams boldly, fails publicly and still chooses to rise, that person becomes unforgettable, because authenticity sticks, authenticity lasts, authenticity reaches places that perfection can never touch. And yes, authenticity is risky, it means you will be judged, it means you will be misunderstood, it means you will not be everyone's favorite, but the cost of authenticity is nothing compared to the cost of perfection, because perfection will steal your joy, it will drain your energy, it will convince you to live a life that does not belong to you, but authenticity will set you free, authenticity will remind you that you were never meant to blend in, you were always meant to stand out, not because you are flawless but because you are real. Beauty is authenticity, not perfection, because in the end nobody remembers the perfect body, the perfect outfit, the perfect face, people remember the way you made them feel, they remember the comfort of your presence, the warmth of your honesty, the courage of your truth, and that is why the most beautiful thing you can ever be is yourself, raw, real, unedited, and unapologetic, because that kind of beauty does not fade, it does not age, it does not disappear, it only grows stronger the more you choose to live it.